following a significant turn of events for Penn Badley's Joe Goldberg, the protagonist. You Season 4 has come to an explosive conclusion during the second half of the season. The thriller series on Netflix released its first 5 episodes in February, and the remaining 5 episodes debuted on March 9. The first half of You Season 4 followed serial killer and stalker Joe as he looked for Marion Bellamy, his most recent obsession. After killing his wife Love Quinn at the end of Season 3, Joe went to Paris to find Marion, but he found her in London in the end. Joe surprised himself by not harming Marion when he found her and instead letting her go. Joe pretended to have finished the job and let Marion board a Eurostar train back to Paris, where her daughter Juliet was waiting, despite the fact that an assassin by the name of Elliot had asked him to kill Marion so he could stay safe in London. Joe had in fact poisoned Marion and kidnapped her, despite the audience's belief that she had safely boarded her train. In You Season 4, Part 2, it was made abundantly clear that Joe had not altered at all. Joe ate his head against the box's wall after delivering Marion to one of his glass boxes in a London subway stop that was empty, separating his personality into Jonathan Moore and Joe Goldberg. Joe Goldberg went to Paris, France at the end of Season 3 of You, looking for Marion Bellamy, who had been his most recent love interest and was played by Toddy Gabrielle. During the first half of Season 4, it appeared as though he had allowed her to survive, but things were not as they appeared. After that, Joe started playing Professor Jonathan Moore in London. There, he taught literature at Darcy College and became friends with Kate Galvin, the character played by Charlotte Ritchie, and her Oxford-educated group. The Etheridge Killer, a serial killer, began targeting the friendship group and asking Joe questions about his past. At the conclusion of his first half of Season 4, Joe appeared to have realized that Rez Montrose, a politician and friend of Kate, was the Etheridge Killer. However, Joe created the Eat the Rich Killer character out of thin air after reading Rye's autobiography, despite the fact that Reese is a real person in Kate's life. Joe was the real murderer of the affluent. The season came to an equally shocking conclusion after all the shocking revelations that were made throughout the episodes. Joe killed the actual Rise because he thought he was a murderer, despite the fact that the Rise had never killed anyone. Joe leaves Marianne's body on a bench in a London park in the opening scene of the 4th season finale of You, The Death of Jonathan Moore. Marianne took her own life by overdosing on the painkillers Joe had left for her in the glass cage. The body of Rise, whom Joe killed in real life before realizing he had imagined Rise as a serial killer in his head, is then found in the woods. Nadia, a student of Joe's who discovered Marion in the cage and attempted to help her escape before she passed away, tells her boyfriend Edward what she has learned about her professor.
Everyone. There are
However,
less than
she is
2
disappointed to learn that Joe has already disposed of the cage and Marianne's body in the abandoned underground station. The scene then, at that point, slices to a scene where Joe is composing a self-destruction note and endeavoring to be disgusted of it by the assent to him. Joe sets out to carry out his plan and jumps off a bridge into a river in London after she tells Edward that the only way to end Joe's reign of terror is to kill him. However, he kills Kate's father as a final act of love for her. Joe does not want to hurt Kate, his love interest, because he feels guilty about Marion. After jumping, Joe falls into the river, but he wakes up in a hospital alive. He makes a promise to start a new life with Kate and put the past behind him when she comes to visit. Nadia and her boyfriend simultaneously break into Joe's apartment. They find his trophy box, which is filled with evidence that he killed the real Rez Montrose. Joe Goldberg attempted suicide at the end, but he was able to survive. After that, he committed to getting over his past and settling into his new life with Kate. In this image, he is pictured alongside Montrose, a character created by Adspire. Nadia had previously revealed to Edward that she and Marion had staged Marion's death, leaving a note instructing Joe to bury her body in a park so that Marion would be free to flee to Paris with her daughter when she awoke from her drug-induced stupor. As she leaves Joe's apartment, Nadia looks for Edward, who had been watching. However, she meets Joe instead, who admits that he is aware that she is monitoring him. We learn what Kate's friends, at least those who are still alive, have been up to since Joe made the decision to start a new life with Kate after the scene abruptly ends. Joe and Kate are seen participating in a joint interview in the final scenes in New York City. While simultaneously blaming his deceased ex-wife Love for all the Major Orlinda murders, Joe has revealed his true identity to the world. Kate and Joe Goldberg began their new life in New York City. However, as season 4 came to a close, the final scene showed how much of him still resembles his Rise alter ego. We find out that Joe and Kate bought her late father's business and turned it into a charity. The story moves on to Joe pleading with Nadia not to report him to the police after learning of her evidence against him. The camera pans to show that Joe killed Edward while keeping an eye on Nadia. Joe reveals in a voiceover that Nadia is still in prison for the murder she did not commit after she refuses to cooperate with him. Joe says that he won't accuse Nadia of killing Edward if she doesn't talk about him. Joe sees Rise's visage smiling back at him as he looks out the window in New York in the final scene, indicating that his alter ego won't be leaving anytime